Thanks, Maria. I think that's the greatest compliment I could get. I'm a mudder. I'm very proud of that, all right? Mark, you were excellent. Give him another big round of applause. Excellent. To the trustees and members of the dais and to the faculty and families and the incredible class of 2010, I am honored to be here, and I have been thinking about what I might say for some time since Maria called me. You should know that your president has become one of the leading voices in our country when talking about math and science education in America. Would you give her a hand? She is phenomenal. And so I had a chance to talk with Maureen and Brian and Mark and to ask them about their thoughts about what I might say, because I'm always able to integrate thinking of people with whom I'll be talking. And as Brian was talking, I started crossing off the things I was going to say, because he was saying, well, you don't want to talk about this and you don't want to talk about that. So by the time he finished, I didn't let him know, but I had no speech, all right? And then the things I was going to say, quite frankly, Mark did an excellent job of saying them already, so I'm very proud about that too. The fact is that as I read about you and as I've heard about you, I know that you are one of the premier institutions in science and engineering with this broad liberal arts base, that you talk a great deal with students about impact on society, that you have had an opportunity to work closely with them. Faculty, the best thing I can tell you is as I talked to Maureen and Brian and Mark, and as I met other students in the dining hall, the one theme that came through consistently was that there is a sense of community here, that faculty care deeply about students, that students are encouraged to explore the possibilities, and they feel very good about that. And when I think about the essence of your education, students, graduates, it is that you have a sense of self, that you have a sense of purpose, that you are obviously excellent in math and science, and the students were saying, you don't have to tell us we're good. We've gotten that. Everybody in the country knows you're really good, right? But what is really remarkable is that you are now prepared to use what you've learned and your way of thinking and solving problems in your clinic program and being involved in real life situations, as Mark talked about, in a different way to solve the problems of the world. Each of us has a story. And as Maureen, who's going to Teach for America, said, it would be good to hear something about the future of education. As I saw other students who were thinking about doing something in their communities, it was clear to me that I wanted to make a statement about stories. And my essential message today is that the way you think about yourselves, graduates, and the language that you use, the way you interact with each other and with others around you, your sense of integrity will determine not only who you are today, but who you will be in the future. My mother was an English teacher, and I would often hear her quoting different pieces of literature. And there were times when she would quote Emily Dickinson, "Tell the truth, but tell it slant." And we'd talk about what that meant. And there were other times when she would quote her hero, Zora Neale Hurston, who wrote a book entitled Their Eyes Were Watching God during the Harlem Renaissance in the early part of the 20th century. And the book begins, ships at a distance have every man's wish on board. For some, they come in with the tide. For others, they sail forever on the horizon, never out of sight, never landing, until the watcher turns his head away in resignation, his dreams mocked to death by time. That is the life of men and women. Her essential point was that there were two groups of people in our society. People, in the words of Langston Hughes, whose dreams seemed to forever be deferred. And then there were people like all of us here today whose dreams are fulfilled. It occurs to me that the fundamental point of education is to help people to dream about the possibilities and then to help them acquire the values and the skills necessary to reach their dreams. Today is such a day for you. And so it will be your dreams and your values that will shape your lives. I had the privilege last Sunday at about this time of being in the audience at my alma mater at Hampton. My wife and I were celebrating our 40th reunion from Hampton. And I asked her to tell me something she remembered from the commencement speaker. And parents and families, I'm asking you to think back to your high school or college graduations and see if you remember what the commencement speaker said. Unfortunately, the secret today that I'm letting out, I can't remember a thing the person said. But this morning, I remembered what was most important about the speaker. I do know that she said 40 years ago, she challenged the graduates to not limit themselves, to think about how far they could go in life, and to care about others as they moved along the way. One of the students today amazingly said to me, say something about your worst fears when you were in the graduating class. Other students said, some people have jobs, some don't. Some know what they're going to do, some don't. And so, students, the best thing I can tell you, the best news of the day, is that you will be okay. You will be okay. Families, give your students, sons and daughters a hand, so let them know they will be okay. They will be okay. And the point there is that the same practices and habits you've used to get you to this point will serve you well. The hard work, the discipline, focusing on the work, getting to know other people, all those things will serve you well. But what makes you, again, different is that broad liberal education you have. You'll be able to be creative and find amazing ways of not only getting a job, much more important, but of making that difference that we always talk about. And so today, I'm going to ask you, graduates, to do what I didn't do. I spent my time thinking about grad school and the fact that I just asked my girlfriend to marry me and trying to figure out, was I old enough to do this and would I succeed? And I was literally, while the speaker was talking, I was worried the whole time about tomorrow. And so the next point to you is to savor this moment. The older we get, the more we realize that when you have a good moment, enjoy that moment. Because your families will tell you, the faculty will tell you, life can be rather hard for anybody. And so when you have a moment like this with your families around you and your faculty here whom you care about and your classmates to whom you're going to be excellent, as Mark talks about, right? I mean, you've got everything possible that a human being could want in his or her life at this moment. So savor it so that you can remember it when you have challenging times in the future. The next point. How many of you graduates remember when you were in middle school? Can you remember when you were in middle school? If you think about it, you almost were blinking and now you are college graduates. How many of the parents remember when you were graduating from college? Raise your hands. You know, and all of a sudden here you are back now and you're saying, where did the time go? We all say that. How is it possible that 22 years have passed? Well, the fact is, time passes fast. And what you do is, you take the time to enjoy each moment. And so last week, I was thinking about, where could 40 years have gone? Well, the good news, I said to my wife, is we've done okay. It's all right. All right? Our son is grown. We're okay. I said, the bad news is, we've gotten old. But that's okay. That's all right. It's all right. We are alive. That's the good news, right? But here's the point. We took the time, and all week I said, I want to remember what happened that I might say to the graduates. And I told you, as a Southerner, we Southerners love stories. You may not remember anything else I tell you, but you remember stories, all right? I grew up as a fat little kid in Birmingham loving two things, blueberry pie and mathematics. I love mathematics. I get goosebumps doing mathematics. Give me a hand for getting goosebumps loving mathematics. I love mathematics. You know, I mean, I love it. And I come from a campus where people really think it's cool to love math. We are the national chess champions. Give me a big hand for being the national chess champions, right? It's great. But my point, but graduates, you will be in a world, in a country where people are afraid of math and science. You know this. And a part of your role, like your faculty and others, will be to help bridge this divide between people who love math and science and people who are afraid of it. Because quite frankly, the math and science will make all the difference in solving so many of the problems in the world. If you read Tom Friedman and so many other thought leaders, you know that combined with what we get from the humanities and social sciences, that we need the technical expertise you have for the healthcare issues, for the energy issues, for the defense issues. And so you will be leaders who can help to get the American public to appreciate the need to invest in science and to invest in math and science teachers and to connect it to all kinds of people. And so I grew up loving this math. In class, the teacher would give us 10 problems, and I would say, give us 10 more problems, teacher, and the whole class would go, shut up, Freeman. So there was a designated kicker by me every day because I just couldn't help myself. Just goosebumps with this mathematics. And all of a sudden, amazingly, I found myself saying, I want to do something about this and get more kids involved in math. And so for the past 40 years plus, I've done just that. Well, one experience that changed my life was sitting in the back of my church, not wanting to be there when I was 12. What kid wants to be sitting in church on a Wednesday night listening to somebody talk? And the guy said something that all of a sudden got my attention. He said, every child in America should have the chance to have a first-rate education. And if we work together, we can convince our country that each of the children here deserves a first-rate education. Well, I wanted a first-rate education. I grew up in a city that gave me hand-me-down books from the white schools. I was told I was not good enough to go to class or school with white children. And I figured I was as smart as anybody else because to me, being smart meant being excited about the work, being hardworking and willing to do whatever it would take to be, in the words of Mark, excellent. And so I said, wow, what can we do? And I looked up, I said, who is this guy? And his name was Reverend Martin Luther King. And he said, and it was a great story. And amazingly, it is hard to tell it because I was in the back of the room working on math, listening to this man, and somehow I connected the math to civil rights. That if every child could learn how to read and do mathematics, the child could do all kinds of things. And so, as a result, I wanted to do what he said. He said he wanted the children to march in the streets of Birmingham, and unfortunately, that meant they would go to jail. And the first day, there were guns and dogs and fire hoses, and by the second day, I said to my parents, I've got to go and help out. And they said, no way. I said, wait a minute, you made me go and sit in church all that time? And now you're going to tell me I can't do what he said? I said, you folks are hypocrites. Now, at that time, you really didn't talk back to your parents, believe me. So my daddy said, boy, go to your room, right? But early the next morning, they came in and told me, if you want to do this, we will support you. Now, at that point, students, this is about courage. All of a sudden, I got really afraid. I said, oh, my God, I'm going to be going with the dogs, right? But it was too late to turn around. And I really wanted to get to some good schools. That was my motivation. I led my group to jail. We marched and we were thrown in the paddy wagon. I spent a horrible week in jail. But what the experience taught me was several things. Number one, I don't have time to be a victim. Number two, even children can think critically and make decisions that can affect their lives. And number three, America is a great country. Who would have thought years later that I would be president of a predominantly white university when I couldn't even go to class with children of other types? America is a great country, a great country. And the message to you today, students, is that just as the world has changed dramatically since the 60s and 70s, and with all of the legislation, all the things that are happening, that this is a period when we will see big change. You know, in the 60s, few people know it, but only 10% of Americans had college degrees. And today, only 25%. We have about 32% of whites, but only 17% of blacks, and even only 11% of the fastest growing population in our country, Hispanics. And it's a major challenge in our country as we talk about helping all groups, because if we are to be competitive, and this is where you come in, talking about the future of education, we must find ways, as your college is doing with children in LA, to educate many more people of all races to love to read, to love to compute, to love the spirit of learning itself. And that's where you become the examples for other people. You know, often when I say to my friends that only 25% of Americans have a college degree, their first response is, that couldn't be true, Freeman. Everybody I know has a college degree. And I go, duh, right? Lawyers are around lawyers, engineers are around engineers. People who are advantaged tend to be around people who are advantaged. And the fact is that we in this room are just that. And the message that you've been getting at your college that I want to reinforce is that we don't want to be comfortable simply with people like ourselves who've had all the advantages. And the story for all of you is that each day you're writing another page in your own story. And that stories, as I talked about my own, that stories can inspire you. You know, Bill Fahey is a hero of mine. He was the head of the CDC under 2 presidents. He's a wonderful man who was amazingly a science major, went on and became a physician, became the head of the CDC. But what he did that was significant was to be inspired by Albert Schweitzer's story and being in Africa as a missionary. And he said, I want to do that one day. And he spent time in Africa, and he was just devastated by some of the diseases. And he was really amazing in working to help to eradicate polio and measles. But one of the diseases that he was instrumental in eradicating was river blindness. In many parts of Africa, just a few years ago, every adult over 40 was blind. And it turned out that Merck and company had a drug that could cure the disease. And what he did was to convince Merck with his passion and his authenticity to give away the drug. And they agreed that if he would oversee the program, they would do it. And now when he goes to those parts of Africa, you would think a rock star was there. They come out by the thousands because they can see him and applaud. And he is so humble that he always says, a lot of people made the difference. What's amazing about the story and in life is that today, Bill Fahey is partially blind. He can only see through slits. And his response when I said, how you doing, Bill? He said, Freeman, the world is so big that it is amazing to be able to see through the slits because I appreciate seeing more than ever. Attitude is my final point. Your attitude will make the difference in everything you do. If you take the attitude, I can do this. I've come this far and I can do this. I will help other people. I will use my expertise. All kinds of things are possible. A couple of years ago, as I close, one of my students had just come back from Russia and he was fluent in Russian. And this was an inner city kid. On a campus, my campus has students from 150 countries, but this is one of my black kids, and big guy, and I said, how did you get to be fluent in Russian? He said, I was always fascinated by Russian culture. And I said, well, what do your parents do? And he looked at me and he didn't want to answer, graduates, and then he said reluctantly, Doc, I never wanted to tell you this, but I am a ward of the state. And I had to think about what that meant. It meant he didn't have parents in his life. And I said, son, tell me your story. And he told me about how at first his father, then his mother, each became hooked on drugs, a major problem in our country. And finally his mother abandoned him and left him in a crack house. And he said, Doc, imagine the hell I've been through. I said, how did you get to the university? And he said, a social worker finally got me into foster care and then to a group home, and a teacher told me I was smart and that if I wanted to get out of this poverty, I had to work hard and use my brains. And he said, and my grandmother had told me to use my faith and just pray. And all I did in high school was pray and to keep working hard trying to get out of this poverty. He said, but Doc, some days I couldn't stay on campus. I didn't have enough money. I lived out at the group home. But some days I didn't have food and I had to go to the top of trays by the trash can. And by this time, he's crying, and you'll find out as men get older, they cry more and more, all right? We just do. So we're crying there, and all of a sudden I said, who will be at your commencement for you? And he said, I have nobody. And so at his commencement, we were just like this, And all of a sudden, it was as if my mother, who's now dead, was talking to me. And she said, it was as if she said, get up and say something about him. And I did. And I got up and I said this. And this is in the spirit of your excellence, Mark. I said, students, one of your own whom you care so much about is here alone today while you have wonderful families, because families make us who we are. And I want him to know that you love him. And when I called his name, everybody was so shocked because they had always seen him as the one who elevated other people. He never told them his story. He just worked to elevate other people. And one person got up and another person got up, and all of a sudden the room was filled with this applause and all this love for Tavon. And he came up to me and he said, Doc, I've never felt love before. He said, I will use this for the rest of my life. Well, Tavon went on with the Fulbright Fellowship back to Russia, and he's now at Princeton University. Give Tavon a hand, would you please? And so my message to you, the class of 2010, is if people can do those kinds of things, even without family, imagine how much more you can do with loved ones all around you, with classmates who love you, with faculty who have given you everything they have. You have everything you need now to dream big, to have the right values, and to make that difference. And so I challenge you to watch your thoughts, they become your words. Watch your words, they become your actions. Watch your actions, they become your habits. Watch your habits, they become your character. I tell my students, your character has everything to do with who you are when you don't think anybody's watching, when your mother's not there. So thoughts become words, words become actions, actions become habits, habits become character. Watch your character, it becomes your destiny, dreams, and values. Congratulations to the class of 2010. Thank you all.